Hello everyone and welcome back to Easy Natural English with Liam. Today I want to talk to you about how to have a conversation in English, because this is something a lot of students ask me about, and it's not just about, using correct vocabulary or correct grammar, but what to actually talk about. Perhaps it's because it can be a bit different in some different cultures, or perhaps it's because English is difficult, so you need to think about some extra things. But today I want to talk about some tips. I want to tell you some things you should talk about, and then later I want to talk about some things that you shouldn't talk about, or things you shouldn't ask. So first, let's start with a very important tip, I think, in any language, and that is just to ask a lot of questions. Nobody likes to have a conversation with someone who is just talking about themselves. If someone is saying, I like this, and I do this, and I, me. Of course, this is not a very fun conversation. So important thing is to ask questions. And also, if you're learning English, then, asking a question might be easier than trying to explain something more difficult. So usually in English, and I think in many languages, when we start a conversation with someone new, we usually start by asking them what their job is. And the most natural way to say this, so if you first meet somebody, we usually just say, "Oh, what do you do? What do you do?" And that's it. Because when you use do, like present simple, that means something in general. So if you meet somebody and you say, "Nice to meet you, what's your name?" "My name's Richard." "Oh, Richard, what do you do?" If you just say, "What do you do?" then Richard will understand, oh, he's asking about my job. Yeah, and then Richard might say, oh, I'm an accountant or something. So yeah, just what do you do? Sometimes people say, what do you do for a living? Because living is like the money we make to live our lives. So sometimes, people will say, what do you do for a living? Sorry, the cats are running around. Today, if you're a regular listener of Easy Natural English with Liam, I'm usually in a different room. Today I'm trying to do it in the living room, but now I have the cats running around, so I hope they don't cause too much trouble. So ask somebody what they do as a job, what they do for a living. It's a very normal way to start. Now you can see them. You can see them running by. Hey, be quiet. Be quiet. Okay, I think I need to deal with the cats. Okay, with the cats out of the way, I can continue. So when somebody tells you what their job is, of course, it's very easy conversation to ask them some questions about their job. That sounds like an interesting job. What is your position exactly? What is your role? Because perhaps they might just tell you, I work in a bank. But there are many different positions in a bank. So you could ask them, oh, what is your position exactly? Or, do you enjoy this job? Or what do you do like day to day? So you can ask them some things about their job, and that's an easy conversation starter. After talking about the job, then it can depend on the situation. So if you're speaking English to somebody, then, and you're not a native English speaker, you're probably coming from different countries. So if they're visiting your country, you can ask them, how are you enjoying, let's imagine it's Tokyo. You could say like, oh, are you enjoying Tokyo? Like, where have you been so far? You can ask them about their sort of, if they've had any time to do any tourism or sightseeing. Or if the situation is reversed and you're in, their hometown, you can ask them for recommendations. Like you can say, I'm a visitor here. Is there anywhere that you would recommend for me to visit? And next, I would say talking about hobbies is always a very easy way to start a conversation. So if you're talking to them about work and then you're sort of finishing that conversation, you can say, well, when you are not working, what do you do in your free time? So it's an easy way to segue. Segue means to like connect two conversations. Finish talking about work. Oh, when you're not working, what do you like to do? Or what do you do in your spare time or your free time? And again, it's very good to ask questions. People enjoy talking about themselves. We all do. So if you ask somebody about their hobbies, I'm sure they will very, very, very happily explain to you about their hobbies. So yeah, hobbies is a good way to go. And then also when you're talking about, more of their life outside of work, you can ask them about their family and maybe where they live. Sometimes asking about someone's family might seem a bit like intrusive, like you're, asking something private. But there's a way we usually do this in English that's a bit less direct. So we'll say something like, do you live alone? And then we don't say anything. So you'll hear native English speakers do this a lot. When a question might be a bit direct, they just finish the sentence with or, like or ... So they might say like, earlier I was talking about someone's work, do you like your job and you just leave it. You see, yeah. So do you live alone? Do you live by yourself? And then you just wait and then you let them finish the sentence like, oh, I live with my family. Oh, I live with my wife. I live with my wife and children or husband and children. So yeah, you can use this as a way to ask things when you feel like it might be a bit too private or a bit too direct. But really, it's okay. It's quite normal for English speakers, Americans, Australians, British people, all English speakers. It's quite normal. We ask someone about their family, and then if they tell you about their, oh, I live with my wife and kids, then you can talk about what you do in their spare time. So like, what do you take do you have much time to spend with your children? What do you like to do with them? And they can talk about going to the park or playing video games or whatever they do together. And then where they live. So if you ask them like, oh, and where do you live? Can sound again a bit like private. Where do you live? So sometimes we say whereabouts do you live? So whereabouts, it means like around, you're not asking exactly for their address or something, you're saying whereabouts. Or I often say to people like, if someone tells me, they're from, let's say London, and then I say, oh, what area do you live in? What area do you live in? And then they can just tell you the general like suburb or something. So London, they might say, oh, I live in Camden. And then if you know about Camden, you can of course start talking about that. If you don't know, you can ask them, oh, what's Camden like? Yeah, what is it like? And this is a very common question to ask somebody when you don't know about somebody. What's it like? What's it like living in Camden? And they could tell you, oh, there's lots of great markets and stuff. Yeah, Camden's a good place for markets if you are in London. Okay, so then that's things that are good to talk about. So just remember, ask questions, try to follow up questions. So if you ask a question like, what's your job? And they tell you, then just say, well, how is your job? Do you like your job? What is your job like? And if they say, I live in London. Oh, what's it like living in London? How is living in London? Do you like living in London? You just follow up these questions like with how or what. Just follow up with another like open question that allows the conversation to flow. So that's things that we should talk about. Now some things that perhaps we shouldn't talk about or things that we shouldn't ask. And I think this one is similar. in a lot of cultures is usually we don't ask somebody how much money they make. So when you're talking about someone's job, if they tell you their job, it's okay to say, well, what is your job like? Or do you enjoy your job? But you probably shouldn't say, is the money good? Or how much money do you make? Asking someone their salary can be a little bit private. It's something people don't usually like to talk about. Sometimes you might hear people say, is the money good? So that's a little bit less direct than saying, how much do you make? How much do you make is asking specifically. Sometimes you might hear native speakers say, is the money good? And then the person can just say yes or no. But personally, I think it's better just to not to ask at all. It's probably, safer not to ask anything about salary. If they want to tell you about it, that's up to them. Maybe when you say, what is the job like? Or how is your job? Then they might tell you if they want to. They might say, it's good, but the money could be better. They might tell you. So don't ask about salary. And another thing also maybe similar in a lot of cultures, asking about age can be a bit private. I know when I lived in Vietnam, people ask about age a lot because in the Vietnamese language, the way you say you to somebody and I, the pronoun, it depends on the person's age. You need to know, am I younger than you or older than you, to know what kind of pronoun to use. So maybe in Vietnam, sometimes it's okay to ask people about their age. But yeah, as an English speaker, I'm not bothered because I'm a young man. But it was surprising how when I was in Vietnam, I felt like a lot of people asked me very quickly, what's your name, Liam? How old are you? A lot of people asking how old I was. But yeah, in English, especially if it's a woman, and especially if it's a woman who might be a little bit older, not old, but just older, maybe, approaching maybe anything over 30 years old, maybe 40 years old, maybe some women, maybe some men too, but particularly women, maybe they don't want you to ask how old they are. So yeah, try to stay away from that question as well, and then you can have a nice, safe conversation. One thing I would say, and this is kind of something that I do when I'm having conversations, is I try not to make assumptions. So to assume something or to make an assumption means to guess something. So, sometimes, for example, I have people talk to me and I'm from the UK and they say, oh, you're from the UK. You must like football. You must like soccer. But I don't. I don't like football and I don't like, I don't like soccer. So it's kind of just stops the conversation because they say, oh, you must like football. And then I say, no, I don't actually. And then it's like, oh, okay. And it kind of kills the conversation a bit. So I think it's okay if I say I'm from the UK for you to say, oh, do you like football? Because that's not making an assumption. Because the example I gave is kind of harmless. It's not an insulting assumption. But sometimes people might make an assumption that is a bit of a stereotype. It could be a bit offensive. So yeah, I would say don't try to guess things about other people's personality just because of where they come from or what they look like. If you meet someone, for example, like me with tattoos, and then you say oh, you must be a musician. And then they're like, no, I'm not a musician, and then, they feel like they've been judged or something. So yeah, maybe try not to make assumptions. I think that's probably good to do in every language, but that's just my thing. And then last thing, like I said, a good thing to do is ask lots of questions. And a bad thing to do would just be to talk about yourself too much. If you're just not asking many questions, and if you're just talking, it can be very boring for the other person and it doesn't go two ways. So yeah, that's my general tips for having a conversation in English. You could probably apply these to most languages. What do you think? If you have any extra tips Or if you disagree with some of my tips, then please write your comments below in the YouTube video, and yeah, let me know what you think. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening today. If you're watching the YouTube version, please like, subscribe, and comment. If you're listening to the podcast version, please review. Everyone share with your friends, and I'll see you all back here next time.